Time to get into the offensive lines, Michael, and it starts with our pro tip. We've seen this play out on a number of occasions over the past few seasons. The Cincinnati Bengals, probably the best example of this from last year, where I always say, be careful betting on NFL teams early in the season that overhauled their offensive line in the offseason. It's not going to necessarily gel right away in weeks 1 or 2. Not to say you should just automatically bet those teams blindly to the under, but as we saw with the Bengals last year, Michael, it took some time for all that investment to pay off, and it wasn't just all rosy right out of the chute, as Joe Burrow had a lot of time to get adjusted with those new guys.
Yeah, and I mean, people don't realize Joe Burrow led the league last year in passes batted down for a big quarterback. And why? Because he had so much pressure coming inside, and they finally were able to get that fixed. And with Ted Karras and making the change at guards with Alex Kappa, that certainly helped them. But I think, to me, you got to give it some time. For example, New England's offensive line struggling this summer. Owanu, their offensive guard, who I have as a blue chip offensive guard, he's been out most of the summer. He's on PUP. He needs to get back, but just because he comes back doesn't mean he plays to a blue chip level, right? And one of the things that I truly believe in handicap it is bad offensive lines don't travel, right? And it's really important to handicap offensive lines totally, because when you have a great line like Philadelphia has, the road is easier. You play better on the road, and that 3-point, 2.5-point value that you give for the home team goes away if you have a lot of offensive linemen like Philadelphia. Lane Johnson, blue chip. You know, they've got Jason Kelsey, blue chip. So they've got really good players. Malata is a red chip. I mean, they've got a lot of good players in that line. And so when they go on the road, they play well. And I think you've got to tie all that together.
Yep. I don't think it's a surprise either, as we're going to get into your top 5 units in the league, that these 5 units have at least 4 starters back from a season ago. I mean, continuity really does matter. And you think about Philadelphia, so they take your top spot. I mean, they bring in Cam Jurgens as the one new player on that offensive line who was drafted in 2022, who has had reps, though. A lot of people view like he's ready to step in, fill that void at right guard. And so Philadelphia is kind of unique in the fact that not only do they have continuity, but you just mentioned, 3 other guys on the O-line who are either red chip or in that blue chip category among the best at their position.
Right. And take it conversely, like last year, who struggled early in the year? Pittsburgh, right? Pittsburgh finishes 7-2 over the last 9 games, but their offensive line was not ready to play opening day. I mean, they struggled. Dan Moore wasn't ready to play left tackle. James Daniel was a new guy coming in. So I think this year when you watch Pittsburgh in the preseason, you can see they've got much better continuity with their offensive line. That's really important. And I think you're right with your pro tip. You've got to be very careful, especially if a line isn't playing well and they go on the road. Carolina's line's not playing very well right now. New England's line's not playing well right now. They both open up at home. That helps. But if you got to go on the road and, San Francisco's got to go into Pittsburgh, and knowing Pittsburgh's really good, I know Trent Williams hasn't played, but is it all going to come together? Just don't assume that. That's why you have to grade these offensive lines from 1 to 32, because they are the indicator on how much value you put to the home team and the road team.
Sure, and for bettors wondering, all right, well, who are the teams going in who have a ton of new pieces rotating in? Tampa Bay, Washington, Arizona, and the LA Rams, all with only 2 returning starters from a season ago, at least projected. And obviously, all these situations, they're not all equal, right? There can be better players brought in. Tennessee, by the way, only 1 returning starter from a season ago. So just keep that in mind. Those are a few teams just off the top, and those are all teams that definitely rank, I would say, in the bottom half of offensive lineman rankings. Yeah. Partially at least, because of that lack of continuity. And as far as your top 5, so we mentioned Philadelphia number 1. How did you break down the rest of your list? And what was really the big differentiating factor between which actually made it and did not as far as your top 5?
Well, I think it's the versatility of the line, right? So you could say San Francisco's offensive line is really good. Well, if they had a drop-back pass game, it becomes a little bit of a problem. And they've got some changes. So to me, it's can they run the ball when the other team knows they need to run it? And can they throw it when the other team they need to throw it? I think Philadelphia, clearly that's the strength of their football team. Cleveland last year. Cleveland's really a good offensive line, and Bill Callahan does a nice job. They can run the football. Now, when they get involved into a drop-back pass game, they still have the ability to do that. They can effectively drop-back pass. I think Kansas City, even though their line was good last year, they went out and tried to improve it. They knew that Orlando Brown struggles at left tackle in terms of a pure drop-back pass game. And so they tried to improve on that area. They signed Donovan Smith. They signed Taylor from Jacksonville. They're trying to make this line good. Detroit, one of the reasons why they're so good is because their line's good. They have invested in this offensive line, and they've reaped the benefits. Atlanta's another team that has invested greatly in their offensive line. I mean, they've got 3 number 1 picks. They've signed a free agent, a high-level free, and they've re-signed all these guys. It isn't like they just go out there and say, we draft these guys, but we don't want them back. I mean, they have. And so, to me, that's why they're able to run the ball. Now, can Atlanta pass block? That remains to be seen. They're more of a play-action pass team. But that's the criteria. Right. Dallas just missed because I just think Tyron Smith, can he stay healthy? I love Taylor Smith. I think Taylor Smith has a chance to be a blue-chip offensive tackle. They play him at left guard, but I think if they kicked him out to left tackle, he's a really good player. They hit with that as a draft pick. Everybody was worried about his holding calls. I thought he played really well. I mean, this Dallas line has to stay healthy. Steele has to stay healthy. Smith has to stay healthy.
So Dallas on the honorable mention list here. We're talking top 5 offensive line units to wrap up the show on the Lombardi line. And so I brought up Kansas City is the one team you have on your list. Have 2 different starters to replace. And I'm curious your thoughts just on the, for Donovan Smith's potential to bounce back at left tackle. You've talked about the issues that left tackle has been at for Kansas City, and they're going to, again, try to overhaul the tackle positions. Smith did allow 6 sacks a season ago, but it's a guy who's about to be 30. He's a veteran who's gotten a good amount of reps. Where do you view his general ceiling to be at as far as getting back to a really, really good offensive lineman?
Well, I mean, look, Brady got sacked 6 times with Smith at left tackle, and we know Brady gets rid of the ball quicker than anybody, right? And the benefit Smith has this year is he's also got Patrick Mahomes to kind of get himself out of some trouble and not get hit with the sacks. I think Tooney, I didn't have him on my red or blue chip list. I think he's a good player, but he's over 30, and it's starting to wear on him a little bit. Look, I think that's the concern. Can Smith, Tooney, and can those guys play well? Taylor has to play well, too, at right tackle. Andrew Wiley, he went to Washington. That they really improved him. One of the things you have to look at is the line coach, right? The line coach is one of the most important hires of any team in the league. And because he controls 5 players plus the development of players. Those guys don't get paid enough. They really are the most valuable guys within the offense. They don't get enough looks. They don't get enough love. But that when they come together as a unit, like some of these teams do in the league, it shows itself and they're worth their value. It's one of the reasons why last year, when you look at Carolina, what was good about Carolina? Their offensive line. So James Campen, who had another year on they didn't let James Campen leave. Now they're struggling this year as they change within the framework of their team because Frank Reich's coming in. But that was the strength of their team this year. They got to get that back.
The team we have not mentioned yet, we'll do it right now, Detroit Lions. What do you like the most about this Lions group that cracks your top 5?
Well, I think Ragnon's got to stay healthy because he's a good player at center, and I think that they got Jonah Jackson, who they drafted in the 3rd round in 2020. He's really good. Sewell playing right tackle when he could easily be a left tackle because Taylor Decker's over there at left tackle. So they're really strong. They went out and signed Glasgow as a free agent. He's over 30, the Michigan kid. Vitae, the kid that they signed from Philadelphia, doesn't even play. They've got depth. They got depth in their offensive line. So I like what they do. They have some physicality to what they're doing. I think with Gibbs in the backfield, with Montgomery, this is the reason why they get by with lesser. The receiver room's got to rank in the bottom 10 of the league, right? I know St. Brown's really good, but that room isn't great. But the reason they're able to get away with it is because they can protect. Remember, football's not a complex game. If you make the defense count to 5 Mississippi, you'll get guys open. If you only make them count to 3 Mississippi, ain't nobody gets open. And when you have a really good offensive line, that's why guys get open.
Great to do this blue chip, red chip exercise with you as well, Michael. And you and Femi, right? Ratcheting it up, right, on the GM Shuffle pod this week, doing a lot more positions.
Yeah, we're going to do wide receivers and tight ends this week. And by the opening week, we'll have the quarterbacks all rated. And I think what we'll do, too, is do what Thomas Gable did, is rate those backups. And what is the difference there on a sudden change?
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.